I was standing at the window of my studio apartment late one Friday evening, clutching a mug of lukewarm tea, trying to calm the nervous energy that kept surging through me. The skyline outside looked mesmerizing, all twinkling lights and distant neon signs, but I barely registered any of it. My reflection on the glass showed a tired face, dark hair in need of a trim, faint circles under my eyes, and a slight frown. For as long as I can remember, I never liked it when my face betrayed my anxiety. As I studied my reflection, my eyes drifted down toward my clothes. I was wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans, but my thoughts were a million miles away, focused on the side of me I had shared with almost no one. I was about to break my silence with someone I truly cared about, and I had no clue how she would respond. Laura and I had been dating for 6 months, and in those few months, something deeper had formed between us. She had this way of listening intently when I spoke, smiling at my jokes, and she always seemed genuinely interested in who I was. She was a compassionate person, kind to waiters, gentle with cats she found on the street, caring toward her friends, and supportive of her co-workers. She brought that same warmth to her relationship with me. Yet the more I felt this bond between us, the more I feared I was living on borrowed time. Because I carried a secret I suspected could make or break our entire connection. When I was alone, I dressed as a woman. I had a name for that part of myself, Lisa. I discovered Lisa years ago. I was still in my early 20s, fresh out of high school, and living in my parents' home. One night, purely by chance, I found a piece of clothing in the back of my mother's closet, something she no longer wore. I remember feeling drawn to it, something about the texture of the fabric, the color, the style. I felt silly, and I laughed at myself under my breath, but on a whim, I took the blouse to my room. My heart was pounding as though I were doing something terribly wrong. That first time, I barely managed to look at myself in the mirror. I forced myself to push down the panic, to let my curiosity play out. By the time I found the courage to glance at my reflection, I was stunned at what I felt. It wasn't purely about how I looked. It was about the sense of comfort, a deep relief, like a secret door had been opened, revealing a part of me I never knew existed. For a moment, I even felt a little thrill. I tried to tell myself it was just a fleeting experiment, but it wasn't fleeting. Over the following months, I tested the boundaries of this new side. I tried on other clothes that belonged to my mother or older sister whenever I was certain no one else was home. Later, once I moved into my own place, I started buying my own outfits. I had no real clue how to match items at first. I grabbed random skirts, blouses, a few dresses, and the occasional pair of heels, and stashed them in boxes in the closet. I learned to experiment with makeup by watching online tutorials late at night. It was clumsy at first, and I ended up with smudged eyeliner and mismatched foundation. Still, each time I tried, I sensed a kind of relief, as though I were stepping into a secret world. In front of my bedroom mirror, I felt calm in a way I never experienced anywhere else. The name Lisa came to me unexpectedly one afternoon. I had just finished putting on an outfit that I felt good in, and I thought, if this is another version of me, she deserves a name. Lisa sounded right in my head, short, casual, unassuming. Since then, whenever I referred to that side of myself, in my mind or my journal, I called it Lisa. I never told anyone about Lisa. Only my journal served as a confidant. In the outside world, I was Mark, somewhat reserved, living an ordinary life in a mid-sized city, juggling a job in IT, paying bills, trying to spend some weekends with my small circle of friends. I never allowed those friends to see that part of me. I told myself it was too complicated to explain, that they might not understand, or maybe they would judge me. The longer I kept the secret, the more it became second nature. I crafted small lies, told myself excuses about why I always wanted my own living space, why I needed privacy, why I refused to share a closet with any roommate. It created a distance between me and the rest of the world. Then came Laura. We met at a local bookstore while browsing the same shelf in the travel section. I was looking for a guidebook on Thailand, and she wanted a book on Italy. We both reached for the same title by mistake, realized we had each grabbed the other's intended selection, and ended up laughing about it. I remember noticing a small ring on her index finger and how gently her hair fell around her shoulders. Her style caught my eye in a subtle way, casual but thoughtful. She wore comfortable black boots, jeans, and a sweater in a color that complemented her complexion. We got to chatting. She told me she was planning a trip to Italy the following summer and was doing some preliminary research. I admitted I was more in the dreaming stage with my Thailand idea. She teased that I had better get cracking on real plans, or the dream would remain just that. What struck me most was how natural the conversation felt. We spent nearly an hour strolling through the bookstore together, talking about everything from her family to my job. She mentioned working as a graphic designer for a small marketing firm in town. We discovered we liked the same coffee shop. Neither of us lived too far from the bookstore, so she asked if I wanted to grab a drink. I was hesitant because I'm usually a little anxious around new people, but there was something about her, an openness that put me at ease. We ended up at a cozy place a few blocks away, sipping lattes and laughing as if we were old friends. From that day forward, things progressed in small, meaningful steps. A weekend coffee here, a movie there, dinner at a local restaurant. I realized we were dating before either of us explicitly called it that. Over time, we shared personal details. I learned that her parents had divorced when she was 13, and she split holidays between them. She learned that my family lived a few hours away, and I only managed to visit once every couple of months. We talked about our friends, our favorite Netflix shows, and the music we loved. But I never once mentioned Lisa. Every time we had a heart-to-heart conversation, I felt a tiny pang of guilt. I told myself I was waiting for the right moment, but deep down, I was terrified that revealing Lisa would scare her away. A few months into our relationship, I realized Laura was more special to me than just a casual date. I felt at ease around her. She was the one person who could make me chuckle after a bad day, or could guess my mood merely by how I typed a text message. On the flip side, I noticed that the more attached I grew, the more fearful I became. I woke up many mornings thinking, today's the day I'll tell her. But then I'd think through the potential fallout. Would she see me as strange? Would she think I had kept something crucial from her for too long? These questions haunted me. We had been together for about 4 months when she first asked if I was hiding something. We were having dinner at her place, spaghetti with homemade sauce. She always had a knack for cooking meals that were simple yet bursting with flavor, and I loved watching her move around the kitchen. In the dim glow of a small lamp, I noticed she was studying me carefully over the rim of her wine glass. At first, she just let the silence hang, but eventually she said, "I know you're holding back sometimes. Is there something going on?" Her voice was quiet, and it caught me off guard. I felt my pulse spike. "What do you mean?" I asked, forcing a little laugh to cover my nerves. Sometimes it feels like you're about to tell me something important," she said softly. "And then you kind of shut down. If it's something private, I understand. I just want you to know I'm here if you need to talk." I tried to brush it off, mumbling something about being tired or stressed from work, and she didn't push. But the guilt weighed on me for the rest of the evening. I dreaded the day she might discover my secret on her own. Yet the idea of telling her still filled my stomach with a cold swirl of anxiety. Eventually, though, it became too painful to hide. By the time we reached the 6-month mark, The thought of continuing to build a future with her while concealing such a core part of myself felt wrong. I had recurring dreams in which she found my clothes. Sometimes in those dreams, she yelled at me. Other times, she'd stare silently. Either way, I'd wake up soaked in sweat, my heart pounding. It was a signal that I couldn't keep living with that heaviness, so I chose to tell her. That decision didn't come easily. I spent days working up the nerve. Finally, one afternoon while I was working from home, I got a text from Laura. "Busy weekend, or do you want to go see the new exhibit at the art museum?" A wave of relief and dread washed over me. I texted back, "Yes, let's do it, but can we talk after?" She answered almost immediately, "Of course. Everything okay?" I could sense her concern even through text. I just typed back, "I hope so." That Saturday, we wandered through a special exhibit showcasing contemporary local artists. She was more knowledgeable about design and color theory, so I listened as she explained how certain pieces used negative space to evoke emotion. I tried my best to sound engaged, but inside, all I could think about was what I'd say once we left. By the time we stepped out onto the sidewalk in the late afternoon sun, my nerves were stretched to their breaking point. We grabbed 2 iced coffees from a nearby stand, strolled to a bench in a relatively quiet corner of the park, and settled down. My hands shook slightly as I set my coffee on the bench next to me. "Laura," I began, "I've been wanting to tell you something for a while. It's big, and I'm not sure how you'll feel about it." She went still. She had that look in her eyes, the one that said she was bracing herself for anything. "Okay," she said gently. "Just say what you need to say." I swallowed hard. Everything I'd rehearsed in my head scattered. Instead, I just forced the words out. "There's a part of me I haven't told you about. I have this other side. I dress up as a woman sometimes. I have a name for her, Lisa." The words hung in the air, and it felt like the entire park fell silent. I saw a flash of something pass across Laura's eyes. Surprise, uncertainty, maybe confusion. My heart slammed in my chest so hard I could barely breathe. Still, she didn't speak. She set her coffee on the ground, as if she needed both hands free just to process what I was telling her. The silence felt like it lasted forever, but in reality, it couldn't have been more than a few seconds. "Lisa," she echoed carefully. "You mean you have a persona?" I took a breath. "Yes. It's something I discovered in my early 20s. It's not something I do all the time, but it's important to me. I never told you before because I was scared." I looked at the grass at our feet, almost too ashamed to meet her gaze. "I'm sorry for keeping this from you." For a moment, she rubbed her palm over the back of her neck. I couldn't read her expression. I braced myself for anger or disgust, or for her to stand up and walk away. But she just blinked a few times and said, "Does Lisa have good taste in shoes?" Of all the things she could have said, that was the last I expected. It was such a mundane detail, yet it sent relief surging through me. I let out a burst of laughter that was almost a sob. "What?" I said, tears stinging my eyes from the wave of tension releasing. "That's your first question?" She gave me a look that was equal parts hesitant and playful. "I figured if you dress up, you probably have a sense of style. And it's a weird question, I know. It just popped into my head. I'm not sure how else to respond right now." I nodded, swallowing the relief that threatened to make me cry on the spot. "I do like shoes," I admitted. "I've got a few pairs that I really like." Laura exhaled and looked away for a moment, scanning the park as if to gather her thoughts. Then she turned back to me. "Okay, so where do we go from here? It's not something I need to do around you. I wanted you to know because it feels important, and I don't want to keep secrets from you. I understand if you feel upset or if it's too much. I'll give you space or answer any questions you have. I just don't want to hide it anymore." She nodded slowly. "I'm not sure how I feel yet," she admitted. "I'm surprised, but I care about you. I want to understand this." It was that single statement that made everything tilt in a new direction. It felt like a lifeline, not a guarantee that everything would be simple, but a signal that she was willing to keep talking. We ended up returning to my apartment. She didn't even say anything as we walked. She linked her arm with mine in silence, and we just ambled along the sidewalks, the warm late afternoon light casting long shadows around us. Once inside, I offered her a seat on my couch. My place was a bit cramped, an open living room connected to a kitchenette, with a short hallway leading to my bedroom and a separate closet. Everything was tidy that day, because I had a nervous habit of cleaning when anxious. She perched on the edge of the couch, and I sat in a chair across from her. There was a tension in the air, but not a hostile one, more like curiosity and a shared sense that we were stepping into uncharted territory. She started the conversation. "How long have you known?" She spoke so softly I could barely catch the question at first. "Since my early 20s, I confessed. Maybe even earlier, but that's when I first acted on it. I tried on some clothes out of curiosity, and it just felt comfortable. It's not about me not liking who I am in my usual life. It's just something else that makes sense to me. I never felt I could talk about it openly." She took that in quietly. Her gaze flickered around the room, lingering on my bookshelves, the small paintings on the wall, as if she needed to steady herself with ordinary details while she processed this extraordinary new information. "So you do this on your own?" she asked. "Yes. I usually dress in private, or sometimes I'll go for a late-night drive just to feel that freedom, but I don't go out in public. I rarely let anyone see me. Actually, you're the first person I've ever told about Lisa." Something in her posture softened. That's a big thing to share with me. I'm glad you trust me enough, but I need you to be honest about something. Do you think this changes how you feel about us?" I shook my head firmly. "Not at all. My feelings for you haven't changed, and having Lisa doesn't replace or diminish how I care about you. They're just two parts of me." Laura let out a breath. "I see. Okay. Well, I'm not saying I fully understand it, but I'm willing to learn, if you want me to. I want to be part of your life, and that includes every side of you." We spent hours just talking. It was an honest, sometimes uncomfortable discussion, peppered with moments of humor and moments of vulnerability. She asked about my routines, how often I dressed up, whether it was connected to anything deeper. I answered as best I could. She confessed she was worried about being inadequate, or that she might somehow handle it incorrectly. I told her I wasn't even sure how I wanted her to handle it, only that it was important she knew. By the time she left that evening, we were both exhausted, yet there was a sense of relief. The conversation hadn't magically made everything easy, but we had planted the seeds for a new level of honesty. The next few days were a strange roller coaster. We texted and called as usual, but there was an undercurrent of tension. We both felt like we'd crossed a threshold into territory that neither of us fully knew how to navigate. On one hand, she wanted to be supportive. On the other, she admitted she had a lot of questions and wasn't entirely sure how to place Lisa in the context of our relationship. Sometimes she'd call me and say, "I read a random article on this topic, and I'm trying to figure it all out." I would do my best to answer. Other times she'd pause in the middle of a conversation and say, "I'm sorry if I ask the wrong questions." I'd tell her I'd rather she ask than pretend everything was simple. One evening, Nearly a week after I told her, Laura was sitting in my living room, wearing her favorite hoodie and leggings. We had just finished eating takeout pizza when she turned to me. "Would you ever want to show me, Lisa?" Her voice was cautious but kind. My heart did a small flip. "Only if you're comfortable with it," I said. "I don't want to force you to see something you're not ready for." She gave me a searching look. "I think I'd rather see than keep imagining it, because right now I have this vague idea in my head, and it might be easier if I see what Lisa actually looks like." I nodded, feeling equal parts nervous and grateful. "Okay, if you're sure, I can show you." We decided that night wasn't the right time. We were both tired, and I wanted to at least mentally prepare. We agreed to pick a day a week later, a Friday, so she could stay the night if she wanted to, or have space to process if she preferred to go home. That entire week, I felt a restless energy in my stomach. I had never shown Lisa to anyone, so the thought of letting Laura see me in that light was daunting. I kept thinking, what if she looks at me and sees a stranger? What if it's too jarring? When Friday arrived, I cleaned my apartment again, top to bottom. I laid out a few of my favorite outfits in the bedroom, carefully folding them so they wouldn't wrinkle. I set out my makeup on the dresser, checking that everything was in order. I even arranged my modest shoe collection by the closet door. Then I waited. Laura arrived early that evening, dressed casually in jeans and a simple blouse. She carried an overnight bag slung over her shoulder. I could tell she was both curious and apprehensive by the way she hovered in the entryway, taking a moment to slip off her shoes and hang up her jacket. We exchanged a hug, mine probably more tentative than usual, and I offered her a glass of water. "So, how do we do this?" she asked after a moment's pause. "Do I just sit here while you change? Or do you want me to wait in another room?" I blinked. "Right. I guess I haven't really thought about the logistics." I gestured toward the bedroom. "I might need some time to get ready. You can wait out here or you can come in. Either way, I'll need a few minutes." She chose to wait in the living room, so I retreated to the bedroom and quietly closed the door. My hands shook a little as I picked out the outfit I wanted to wear. I decided on something that felt authentic to Lisa rather than anything flashy, a casual knee-length skirt in a soft material, a delicate blouse, and a cardigan. I wanted to show Laura that this wasn't about costume or performance, but a genuine part of me. I changed clothes, then took a few minutes at the mirror to apply some light foundation, a touch of blush, and a bit of eyeshadow. My eyeliner was wobbly at first because my nerves were getting the best of me, but I managed to steady my hand. When I finished, I looked at my reflection. I saw Lisa, familiar to me, but for the very first time, I also saw her as someone else might see her. My heart pounded. I slipped on a pair of flats. I figured I'd go easy on the heels for this first reveal, then opened the bedroom door a crack. I took a breath that seemed to last an eternity before walking into the living room. Laura stood, her back straight, eyes wide. I paused, my heart hammering so hard I thought I might faint. There was a silence that lasted for a few seconds, but it felt like an eternity. Then her posture relaxed, and her eyes softened. "You look nice," she said softly, her voice sincere. "That cardigan suits you." I felt a wave of relief so strong it made me a bit dizzy. I smiled, unsure of how else to respond. "Thank you. This is kind of surreal for me." "It's surreal for me too," she admitted, taking a small step forward. "I've never seen you this way." She paused, and a little smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. "You definitely do have good taste in shoes. Those flats are cute." A shaky laugh escaped me, and I fiddled with the hem of my cardigan. "Yeah, well, they're comfortable." Laura took in the sight of me for a few moments, and I let her look. My face grew warm, but she showed no judgment or mockery. Instead, there was a mixture of curiosity and warmth in her expression. Finally, she motioned to the couch. "Do you want to sit?" I nodded, and we both sat down. The cushions sank under our weight, and the overhead light cast a gentle glow around the room. She turned slightly, angling her body toward me. "You look at ease," she observed, "even though you're nervous." "It's a weird mix," I admitted. "I'm terrified, but also relieved not to hide this from you." We talked for hours, drifting from serious questions to quieter reflections. She asked what specifically I liked about dressing this way, and I told her about how it felt calming to slip into clothes I associated with Lisa: softer fabrics, different silhouettes. She admitted it would take time to get used to seeing me in this light, but she reassured me that this didn't make her view me any less. It felt raw, like we were stepping deeper into each other's minds than ever before. That night, she decided to stay over. She did ask if I'd be comfortable changing back into my usual clothes for bed, and I said yes. Part of me wanted to remain as Lisa for longer, but I understood it was a lot to take in, so I didn't push anything. After I'd changed and wiped off my makeup, we crawled into bed. She snuggled close, but I could sense the hum of all we had discussed still lingering in the air. We drifted off to sleep with a sense of cautious hope. There were no illusions that everything would be perfect from then on, but I felt a step closer to truly being known by her. In the weeks that followed, we found a new routine. Some days it felt entirely normal: morning coffee runs, silly inside jokes, exchanging random memes. Other days, the topic of Lisa would surface, and we'd circle back to the same mixture of curiosity and uncertainty. Laura told me about random thoughts she'd have. "I wonder if you ever thought about venturing out in public," or "Do you prefer certain hairstyles?" She'd occasionally mention articles or videos she found. I thanked her for not shutting down the conversation. She thanked me for trusting her enough to let her in. We didn't have all the answers. Sometimes we ended a conversation just agreeing to let it breathe for a while, but we were navigating it together, which was more than I had ever hoped for. One day, about a month after that first unveiling of Lisa, Laura came over with a garment bag in her arms. She seemed a little hesitant, almost shy, which was unusual for her. I asked what it was, and she explained that she'd done some browsing at a local thrift shop and found a dress she thought Lisa might like, though she didn't know if it would fit or if it was my style. She hesitated, worried that she might be overstepping. I was touched that she was trying to engage with me in a way that felt personal. I tried on the dress. It fit surprisingly well, and the moment I stepped out of the bedroom, I saw a smile light up her face. It wasn't just a superficial grin. It felt deeper, like she was proud to see me embrace this part of myself in front of her. Although I still had moments of doubt, that day was a small milestone in my mind, a signal that maybe we really could make space for Lisa in our relationship. Of course, it wasn't all smooth. We had one particularly difficult conversation not long after. Laura asked if I wanted to eventually go out as Lisa in public. I admitted I'd thought about it, but the idea made me uneasy. What if someone recognized me? Or what if we got weird stares? Laura nodded, but I could tell she felt torn because she didn't want me to hide who I was. However, she also worried about how society might treat me. It was a messy, emotional talk. She cried at one point, saying she didn't want me to be hurt, and I felt an ache in my chest because it reminded me how complicated this was for both of us. We didn't come to any definitive conclusion. We just acknowledged that if going out publicly ever happened, it would need to be at a pace we were both comfortable with. Around this time, I also realized that while Laura was supportive, she needed reassurance that she still mattered to me. I noticed she'd sometimes have doubts or wonder if my feelings toward her were diminished by this other aspect of my life. One night, I found her in my living room, looking pensive. When I asked what was on her mind, she said softly, I just don't want to lose you to Lisa." It broke my heart a little. I took her hand, told her that Lisa didn't replace anything. In truth, I felt closer to her than ever, because she was seeing a part of me I'd never shared with anyone else. She leaned into me, resting her head on my shoulder. After a moment, she murmured that maybe she just needed time to see that for herself. Still, our relationship grew, day by day. Lisa wasn't a constant presence in our lives, but the fact that she was acknowledged brought a strange sense of relief to me. I realized how exhausted I'd been, carrying around that secret. There was a new layer of closeness I felt with Laura, even if we were still figuring out how everything fit together. One Saturday morning, a couple of months after I told her, Laura and I were lounging in bed, the early sunlight streaming through my thin curtains. She rolled over, propped herself up on an elbow, and gave me a groggy smile. "You know, I've been thinking a lot about that day in the park," she said, voice thick with sleep. "The day you told me about Lisa. I remember feeling so scared about what that meant, but the question that popped into my head was about shoes." She let out a small laugh, pressing her face to my shoulder. "I still can't believe I said that." I chuckled too, recalling my own surprise. "Honestly, it saved me from spiraling into panic." She went quiet. "It just made me realize that sometimes these big revelations are so overwhelming, we latch onto some random detail as a lifeline. That question about shoes was mine." She looked up at me. "I'm glad you told me. I'm glad you didn't wait another 6 months. Or never." Her words stuck with me for the rest of the day. That seemingly mundane question, "Does she have good taste in shoes?" had been a small but powerful reminder that we could deal with this in bite-sized pieces. We didn't need to solve everything at once. We just needed to keep talking, keep being honest, and keep trying to understand each other. With that understanding, we continued building our life. We faced the normal ups and downs of any couple. Disagreements over whose turn it was to do the dishes, debates about which movie to watch, silly bickering about who had to make the grocery run. Through it all, Lisa remained a background note in our lives, sometimes moving to the foreground if I felt like dressing, or if she had questions about how I was feeling. But it was never the sole focus of our relationship. We still laughed over inside jokes, went to see new art exhibits, grabbed coffee at the bookstore where we first met. Life carried on, only now it was more authentic, at least for me. One evening, about 4 months after that initial park conversation, we went out for a quiet dinner at a restaurant she liked. It was our version of date night. We chatted about our days, my frustration at a coworker who kept messing up the code repository, her excitement over a new design project at work. After dessert, we strolled along the sidewalk, the city lights glittering around us. A comfortable silence fell between us as we passed by shops and a little fountain in the center of a plaza. Suddenly, Laura squeezed my hand. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" I asked, puzzled. "For not giving up on telling me. I know it must have been terrifying, but you trusted me. I appreciate that." Her voice was soft and genuine. I squeezed her hand back, feeling the warmth of her skin. "Thank you for listening," I whispered, "and for not running away." She pulled me closer, her arm looping around my waist, and we continued our walk, the glow of a nearby street lamp illuminating our path. The night air felt cool and clear. I realized in that moment that our relationship was far from simple, but it was real. We had a connection that could withstand tough conversations and unknown territory. That might have scared me before, but now I found it strangely reassuring. Of course, not every moment afterward was a smooth fairy tale. We had misunderstandings. Sometimes she would say something offhand that stung, though she never intended to hurt me. Sometimes I would clam up, caught in a surge of anxiety, and she'd have to coax me out of my shell. But each time we managed to talk, to explain, to ask. "Where are you coming from?" or "How are you feeling?" We continued to stumble and learn together. One particularly memorable moment came when we decided to take a weekend trip to a cabin that her family owned near a lake. She told me it was a quiet place, usually empty outside of peak season, and we could spend a couple of days away from the city noise. I was game, thinking we would go fishing or hiking or just relax with a stack of books. One morning, I felt the urge to dress up. I asked her if she would be okay if I spent some time as Lisa, just to enjoy the morning light by the lake. She paused, then said, "Sure," with only a hint of trepidation in her voice. I slipped into a comfortable summer dress and a light cardigan. We walked down to the shore together. The breeze played with the hem of the dress, and I felt the quiet exhilaration of being outdoors in a safe, private space. Laura snapped a few photos on her phone, capturing the sun's reflection on the water. She even took one of me, though I could see her fingers tremble slightly. She joked it was because she hadn't had coffee yet, but I knew this was still something she was adjusting to. I appreciated her effort all the same. Afterward, we sat on a small wooden dock, our feet dangling over the edge. I removed my sandals and dipped my toes in the cool water. She rested her head on my shoulder, and we looked out at the serene lake, the ripples sparkling in the sun. For a moment, we didn't talk. We just breathed in the clean air. Then she turned to me and said, "I like sharing these quiet moments with you. Even when things are complicated, I still feel close to you here." That single statement felt like a gentle affirmation we were on a path, maybe not a perfect or straightforward path, but one with room for both Mark and Lisa, and for Laura to be part of that journey. We stayed at the lake until sundown, talking about silly things like the shapes of the clouds or the childhood stories we remembered. It was an unremarkable day on the surface, but it was special because it felt like normalcy had settled into our dynamic. The weeks turned to months, and our 1-year anniversary eventually approached. Laura teased that it felt like 2 years, given everything we had navigated. We decided to commemorate it by going back to that same bookstore where we met. We browsed the shelves, teased each other about the silly romance novels or the non-fiction topics we didn't care about. We picked out a brand new cookbook, thinking we might experiment with new recipes. After leaving the bookstore, we grabbed coffee again, returning to the site of our first long conversation. This time, though, we were different. We had a deeper bond forged by hours of honest talks, the unveiling of Lisa, and the many feelings it stirred up. Laura mentioned how she sometimes worried about the future, but she also said she believed we would figure things out. I echoed her hope, letting my hand linger on hers. We ended the day by walking back to my apartment, stepping onto the same bench we used to share in the park. It was late afternoon. The sun bathed the trees in golden light. We found our usual corner of the park, a quiet area near a small flower bed. The memory of that day months ago when I first told her about Lisa came rushing back. My heart twinged with the echo of that old fear. I remembered the tension in my chest, the dread of losing her, and the astonishment at her shoe question. At the time, I thought it was either the end of our relationship or the beginning of a complicated road. In a way, it was both an end and a beginning. We sat on the bench, sipping our coffee. When Laura spoke, her voice was warm. "Do you remember how terrified we both were?" I nodded. "Yeah, I remember every second of it." She gazed at me, as if searching for any trace of that old fear in my eyes. "And now here we are." "Here we are," I repeated, feeling a surge of gratitude. I thought about all the little steps that led us to this place. The nights we stayed up late, the questions she asked, the times I tried on clothes for her, the tears, the laughter, the slow process of adjusting to each other's boundaries. It all came rushing back in a tidal wave of emotion. We sat there in companionable silence for a while. The park was calmer this time of day, the bustle of the weekend crowd mostly gone. We watched as a few birds pecked at the grass. Someone jogged past us with a small dog, and for some reason, that everyday sight made me realize how lucky I was. Life continued around us, unaffected by our personal stories, and that felt liberating in its own way. Laura eventually leaned her head on my shoulder. "I know it's not perfect," she whispered, echoing a sentiment we had both shared many times. "I'm sure we'll still have rough patches." I felt my lips curve into a small smile. It was never going to be simple, but I'm glad we're finding our way. She reached for my hand and laced her fingers through mine. We watched the sunlight fade through the leaves of the trees, painting patterns on the grass. Neither of us said anything else for a long time. We didn't need to. Just existing in that moment was enough. Two people who had confronted a hard truth, stumbled through doubt and fear, and kept going anyway. Months earlier, I had feared that the moment I told Laura about Lisa would be the moment she left me. Yet here she was, as real and warm as ever, leaning against my shoulder, talking about everyday matters, as well as the complexities that still remained between us. Nothing about our relationship felt easy or perfect, but it felt honest. And that honesty was worth more than all the illusions of a spotless romance I'd ever conjured in my head. As dusk settled, we finally stood up and wandered back to my apartment, where we cooked a simple meal in comfortable silence. Then we sat down with the new cookbook and flipped through recipes, pointing out which ones we might attempt. We laughed about our lack of culinary expertise, but promised we'd try something adventurous soon. And I realized, in the glow of the kitchen light, that this ordinary moment, laughing over recipes, brushing arms with someone I loved, might not seem extraordinary at first glance, but for me, it was monumental, because it was founded on truth. Looking back on everything, I saw how crucial that shoe question had been. By focusing on something small and almost trivial, Laura had broken the crushing weight of silence and allowed us to start talking. It was a small wedge that pried open a door I had so tightly locked. That question, so mundane on the surface, represented her willingness to see beyond the shock and keep us engaged in each other's lives. Each day after that, we learned a little more about what it meant to merge our worlds. Mark's life, Lisa's presence, and Laura's openness, even if it remained a work in progress. Sometimes I'll think back to that moment at the park when I first spoke the words out loud. I dress up as a woman. I call her Lisa. I remember the shame and fear, and I remember how I expected her to stand up and walk away, but she didn't. Instead, she asked about shoes. That small detail still makes me smile because it shows how unpredictable and strangely comforting life can be at times. We can never predict how a person will react to our deepest secrets. All we can do is take that leap of faith and hope we land somewhere softer than we fear. Months later, I still don't claim to have it all figured out. Some nights, Laura and I talk about what the future might look like. Will I remain private about Lisa, or will I one day be open with friends or even family? The answers remain uncertain, but we've learned that an uncertain path doesn't have to be a reason to stop walking. We can still keep going, one step at a time, as long as we communicate. She had once said to me, near the beginning, "I'm not saying I fully understand, but I'm willing to learn." That promise alone created a safe harbor for me, and I like to think I've shown her that my feelings for her are steadfast. We share groceries, watch our favorite shows, argue over who left dishes in the sink, and every so often, we talk about Lisa. We are two people forging a relationship that, like all real relationships, evolves with each passing day. Still, to me, the heart of it can be traced back to that day on the park bench, where I first dared to speak my truth, bracing for an explosion, only to hear, "So, Does she have good taste in shoes? The relief and gratitude that flooded me in that moment was enough to confirm that maybe, just maybe, Laura and I could find a way to navigate it all. We haven't reached a perfect resolution, but the beauty of it is that we don't need a perfect resolution right away. We have what we have: patience, curiosity, warmth, and the shared drive to figure out this puzzle together. And for now, that's enough.
Did you like the story? Hit that like button and tell me what you thought in the comments. Do you want to hear more stories? Subscribe and hit the bell. For exclusive content and early access, check out our Patreon. You can find the link in the description, or you can watch any of the videos shown on my right. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.